Absolutely. Just to pivot a little bit, because I thought this was a very interesting, um, well, alternative attack in terms of the right, on what New York has done. The Republican Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Bailey, announced last week that they are filing a lawsuit against the state of New York, and I'm paraphrasing what he said here, but basically for a direct attack on the democratic process and engaging in unconstitutional lawfare. What do you think about that case and that lawsuit, about its merits?
Well, it's so interesting. He's not the only person. There are, I don't know, 15 to 20 states, including South Carolina and Attorney General Wilson down there, and others who are considering filing this lawsuit. It's a stretch. And I don't think the court will grant standing. Standing means, have you personally been hurt enough to bring the lawsuit? The Supreme Court rendered a decision just yesterday on standing and was very tough on the standing issue. So although the case is a very interesting one, what basically the theory is, look, we in Missouri or we in South Carolina have the right to have a fair national election. And New York, by weaponizing a criminal trial to hurt a candidate, is hurting our ability to have a fair election. Trump, during the debate tonight, was asked, will you accept the results of the election? And I had predicted before what his answer would be, yes, if it's fair. And the question is, will it be fair? You know, we're one of the few democracies in the world that don't have an election commission. Most democratic countries, England, Israel, most European countries, have an election commission that has the power to evaluate on an ongoing real-time basis whether there are problems. For example, there's a great debate in this country about voting machines. I'm involved in that debate. I don't believe, and I've never believed, that private companies should be able to perform a government function that is counting votes without submitting themselves to the kind of scrutiny the government would have to submit itself to. So, by the way, for making that argument, I was sanctioned by a Democratic judge in Arizona for making that constitutional argument. I mean, it seems to me it's so obvious that argument is correct. I mean, if for example, a lot of government functions now are being performed by private parties. Prisons are now being run. Can you imagine somebody who runs a prison for profit saying, well, I'm not going to let you see what kind of food we're serving because we're a private company? If you're performing a government function, you have to behave like the government, which means transparency. So I'm hoping that we'll see a fair election. It's absolutely essential that we see a fair election, and because you know, democracy requires not only that the election be fair, but that it be perceived to be fair. And it's absolutely critical that this election be above reproach, and I hope it is.
Yeah, I think we all agree. So let's transition to talk about Israel, because you just wrote a book last year called The War Against the Jews,
Yeah.
How to End Hamas Barbarism. It's fantastic. I read it.
Thank you.
I think everybody in here has, right? Yeah, if you haven't, I recommend you get it. So on October 7th, we had at least 1,200 Jews murdered in Israel. It's the largest loss of
By the
life.
way, they weren't all Jews. There were some Indonesian workers, there were Philippine workers, there were Arab Israelis who were killed. 1,200 Israelis were killed. The vast majority of them were Jewish, and almost all of them were civilians, but they also killed non-Jews. Anybody who was working for
Israel.
Jews or in Israel was killed. And some of the people who did the killing were people who had worked for Israelis from Gaza and had been given high wages and used their opportunity to spy against Israel and provide secrets. There's one, I'll just interrupt for 1 second because it was so meaningful to me. I went to Israel shortly after all this happened, and I was taken to the places where it happened, and I was told about a woman named Silver, I can't remember her first name, who was a major peacenik. She would go up to the border almost every day and bring sick people from Gaza into Israel to work on to go to hospitals and pay for their treatment. And the first thing that happened is the people who worked with her and the people who she saved pointed out to the terrorists where her safe room was, and they burned her to death. And that's what happened there, among other things. And of course, you have people today who still deny it. The man who lost for Congress the other night in New York, Jamal Bowman, denied that there were rapes. And Me Too, the Me Too movement. I don't know how many of you support the Me Too movement, but it's changed its name. Me Too, except if you're a Jew. They deny these rapes. You should believe every woman, and you should. Every woman who makes a claim should have that claim investigated thoroughly. And the evidence should be evaluated. But the Me Too movement hasn't said a peep about the many Israeli women who have been brutally raped, and raped as part of this effort to try to destroy the nation state of the Jewish people.
So you make the point in your book that this is the largest terrorist attack and largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust.
Right.
And it seems like Israel's right to defend itself is logical. And yet we've seen this mass movement, not only in America, but really across the world, to rise up and support Hamas.
Yeah.
Not just Palestinian people, but Hamas, on the grounds that this is a colonial state, these people are oppressed, and we need to push back against the occupiers, Israel. We just wanted to get your take on all that.
Well, first, the argument is so totally false. Israel is the last thing to a colonial settler state. In Israel's case, Jews have lived in what is now Israel since recorded history. The Bible talks about Abraham, moving to what is now Hebron, to Israel. We know from excavations that Jews have lived there. The whole New Testament is based on Jewish presence in Jerusalem. Jesus knocks over the moneylenders in the temple. The temple was the Jewish temple. Jesus was himself obviously born of Jewish parents, and so this was a return to a land that had been occupied by Jews, had been populated by Jews until the Romans threw them out and changed the name of the country from Judea, which is where the word Jew comes from, Judea, to Palestina, which is a made-up name. And there were no Palestinian people at the time. In fact, a very large percentage of people who now are Palestinians are people who came to Israel from Egypt and from Syria when the Jews began to come back in the 19th century and build kibbutzim and farms, etc. Look, it's a complicated issue, but it wouldn't have been a complicated issue. Israel fought a colonial war against Great Britain. It blew up the King David Hotel, which was the place where England and had all of its colonial experiences, and it fought against colonialism and established self-determination for the Jewish people. I mean, there are colonial settler states, not recently, but New Zealand is a perfect example. Nobody who lives in New Zealand, except for the Maori people, had any connection with New Zealand. They came from England. They came to settle colonialists. They killed and exiled much of the Maori population, and New Zealand is always the first country to vote against Israel, calling it a colonial state. So it's nonsense. There could have been a two-state solution. In 1949, the UN voted to partition the mandate into two states, a Jewish state, tiny little Jewish state with a majority of Jews in it on the coastline of the Mediterranean, and a much larger area of arable land that would have been owned by a Palestinian state. The Palestinians said, no, there's no such thing. This is the head of the Palestinian movement, Haj al-Husseini, saying there's no such thing as the Palestinian people. We are all part of the greater Arab people. We don't want there to be a Palestinian state. We just don't want there to be a Jewish state. So there could have been a two-state solution, and there wasn't. And the Nakba, we hear so much about the Nakba. There wouldn't have been a Nakba had the Arab states not invaded Israel and tried to destroy it genocidally. And only in a defensive war did Israel then fight, and many of the Arabs left and were not allowed to return. Israel offered, by the way, the right of return to 50,000 of them when Ehud Olmert offered a two-state solution. After Bill Clinton and Ehud Barak offered a two-state solution, the Palestinian leadership doesn't know how to take yes for an answer. And they could have had a state. Of all the countries that lack statehood, the Palestinians' claim is the least compelling. The Kurds have a much stronger claim. The Uyghurs in China have a much stronger claim. But have you ever heard a college student march for Kurds? No. Have you ever heard a college student march for the Ukrainians? Have you heard college students march for what's going on in Darfur again today with genocide? No. It's only Israel. And there's only one explanation for it, and that is because Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. And the hatred of anything Jewish has been so pervasive throughout history, and it's so important that all groups, all religious groups, Protestant, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, all unite together to fight back against the newly emerging anti-Semitism that is so rampant today. Look, there are three groups that are part of these demonstrations. There are the radical socialists of America, the extremists who hate America, would love to see America fail. These are anarchists. They used to be called communists. They don't care about Israel or Palestine. They care about America. They want to bring down America. That's one group. The second group are Muslims and Arabs who have legitimate concern. Nobody's going to change their mind. They don't want to see a Jewish state. And the third group are the useful idiots, your children, my grandchildren, my nephews and nieces who wouldn't know what river or what sea they were talking about. They just follow any demonstration. And if it's a leftist demonstration, they join it. And it's so important to respond and not to allow these three groups to dominate. They're destroying education in America. They're really making it hard for our children and grandchildren to learn anything in school. And so it's very important not to sit idly by and just allow this takeover to occur, because it's a takeover not only of the space, a safe space for Jewish students, it's a takeover of the entire educational process. This thing called DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is anti-American to its core. Remember Martin Luther King's dream? I was there. I was a law clerk. I have a dream that someday my children will be evaluated not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That's what I lived for. That's what I fought for. That's what I went down south and fought for. And today it's the opposite. And the DEI people are judged only by their identity. No more meritocracy. No more judge people by how good they are. How many people here would like next time surgery has to be done on you or your loved ones to be done by somebody who was picked based on their identity rather than on their competence? My wife and I were on a plane 2 years ago from Martha's Vineyard to Boston. It was the worst storm ever. And everybody in that plane was hoping this is not a DEI pilot. Everybody was hoping this pilot was picked because he was the best possible pilot to fly us through storms. And so we have to fight against this un-American way of valuing people. Yes, everybody needs a fair break, and we do have to have recognition of the horrible way in which we treated African Americans and other minorities, and continue in some instances to treat them. But the answer is not to abolish meritocracy. The answer is to give everybody more of an opportunity to make it and to compete in the American marketplace of ideas. And unless we do that, we will lose our place in the world as the leader. And I think that's part of the goals of some of these people, is to reduce America's role in the world as a leader. So I, for one, will continue to fight. As a liberal, I will continue to fight against these perversions of justice.